Sarah, welcome to Alopecia Life today.
Hey, how you doing, Deanne?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to have you with us today. You and I had a nice long conversation, and I can't wait for you to share all that we talked about last week because it was really
Yeah.
interesting and exciting and just something that I know people with alopecia will really be interested in, and even people without alopecia. So I think it's really exciting.
Yeah.
So if you could just kind of share with the group and listeners who you are and what you do.
So I'm a nurse, and most recently, I worked in the NICU for a while. When I first became a nurse, well, even back up a little bit, I became a nurse later in life. So when I was 35, I got divorced and moved home, and I had two young boys, and I went back to school. So I became a nurse later in life, and I started out in the NICU, and then now I'm a dialysis nurse. So in my department, we teach patients how to do dialysis at home once their kidneys have failed, and I just love my job. I love my company. I love my job. I have the best team imaginable. And my boys that were young when I was going through school are now grown. They're 20 and 21. And oh, actually, Trey just turned 22. Yeah, oh my gosh.
Mhm.
So it's kind of crazy that I have grown men as
Yeah.
kids. It's so crazy to watch them grow and become
Yeah.
their own person. And I'm in Wichita, Kansas, and well, I live in a small town outside. I grew up on a farm outside, and I'm kind of still in that same area. I come from a large family. I have six brothers and sisters who I'm very, very close to. They're amazing. They're my best friends, and um, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I
Awesome.
guess we'll
No.
get to know each other even more as
Yeah,
we go.
that's perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Okay, so I love hearing that you're a nurse. I feel like nurses are super special. And I mean, definitely within the last few years, we've seen that and felt that kind of more exponentially as ever before. I think we have a newfound appreciation for nurses. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, that's so nice of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was lucky to kind of find my calling later in life, and I think because it was later in life, that really worked to my advantage because
Yeah,
I knew myself a little bit more.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Now, today we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but you and I spoke last week because you had shared about shaving your head. You've had alopecia for a pretty long time,
Yeah.
and so when I saw your video, I was like, this is an interesting perspective because we have a lot of people who um, are diagnosed and then they kind of quickly shave their head. It's always kind of it's all across the board. Sometimes, it's like, oh, it's a month in, I just can't handle anymore. It's 5 years, it's 2 years, it's 15 years. It just kind of depends on who you are and how the loss goes, right? And so for you, I'd love for you to share kind of when you were diagnosed, and then we'll kind of ask some more
Yeah.
questions around that.
I was born in 77, and then when I was 5 years old, that's when my hair started falling out. And being in a very, very small town, we went to a physician who told my parents that I was pulling my hair out. And so I kind of got in trouble for that. And the doctor was saying I was like twirling my hair, and that's why it was coming out in patches. And I thought, I don't remember ever doing that. Was I doing that? Like, is this my fault? Like, what am I doing? What can I
Mm.
stop doing? But then it progressed so much that in really weird patterns where I had lost, it was almost like a reverse skunk where I had this
Mhm.
bald stripe down the front of my head. And then I had this large patch that it's about the size of my palm, and it's always been there since I lost. Um, so they took me to a dermatologist, and that's where I got diagnosed as alopecia areata. And it was really unknown back then. It's gotten more common. More people know about it, more people are talking about it. But back then it was really unheard of, at least in where I grew up. Um, So now the doctor did know back then. She said, once you have one autoimmune disease, then you are prone to others. And later I was in 2018, so much later I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So I'm always kind of keeping an eye on what else could flare up,
Right.
so it came in, I wore wigs initially and tried to cover it up that way. Wigs for me were so uncomfortable and itchy, and oh, I just hated them.
Mhm.
And then like around eighth grade, I kind of figured out, with my aunt was a beautician, and she kind of helped me figure out how to cover it and that sort of thing. And then eventually started using hair pieces to cover and things like that. The video that you referred to, I recently was losing hair in handfuls. I mean, it was just coming out. So I've always gone through these like flare ups and remission and flare ups and remission. Um, Never ever grew, my hair didn't really ever grow back. It always would get worse and then a little bit worse. And each time you go through that grief process and you readjust and you figure out, okay, what am I going to do now? And how am I going to, but I got to a point where it's like, there's just no way to cover all the hair pieces I was using. There was no hair to attach them to,
Right. Hmm.
and the sadness that I felt every time I would shower and
Hmm.
have these I mean, when it comes out in clumps, it's scary. It's
Hmm.
I feel it like physically in my body, like, oh my gosh. And I was tired of that roller coaster. I was just like, this is too painful. Every morning I was kind of crying, getting ready for work. And I love work. So I don't know. I kind of do things impulsively sometimes. And I just thought it's time for me to shave it. I've had this for 42 years, never had to shave my head. And here we go. And I don't know why I did this either, but I recorded it. And then I immediately decided to share it on the alopecia support group on Facebook
Hmm.
that I'm a part of. And the love and support that I got from that post was so meaningful, and so it was just beautiful. I mean, everybody was so understanding. Either people had been through it, or they're
Hmm.
going through it, or their daughter, or there's something so healing about being seen and heard and felt and understood.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. I haven't outed myself all the way. Like I've gone bald to the gym because I'm like, that's easy.
Hmm.
Nobody cares what you look like at the gym. Um, but I haven't been able to do it at work. I'm wearing wigs to work. It just so I'm in process. I'm in progress.
Yeah.
I'm in
Yeah.
transition. I don't know what I'm in.
Well,
But
yeah, we talked about that last week, right? That this
yeah.
isn't like you don't have to do everything all at one time just because you shaved your head. It's not like you're all of a sudden ready to face the world looking like this. I mean, there are some it's just different. Is it different than what you expected it to be? Or you said it was kind of an impulsive thing that you did, but I imagine that there was a thought process that went into
Oh,
it.
sure.
Yeah.
I've thought about it for years and years. I have sisters. I have three sisters, and they're always like, "Oh, you would look great with a bald head. Just do it." Well, they don't really picture. Like I could totally picture how it's going to look patchy. It's not going to be like you have this beautiful, perfect bald head, and mine's like all patchy, and I've got really, really dark hair, so got dark spots, completely bald spots, and which is also kind of odd. And um so I don't know. It's just this adjustment period. For example, like last night I went to a family gathering, and I'm very, very close to my family. They're wonderful, they're supportive. And I was wearing a hat that I had knitted, and I got really hot because we were packed, there were so many people, and I still didn't take off my hat, and
Yeah.
I don't know why. Um I want to get there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel super brave
Hmm.
and super strong. Like when I go to the gym and I'm like, I feel tough and I feel strong and I feel confident. And then sometimes I feel completely vulnerable um, and yeah, self conscious.
Yeah. So I do want to share with you that I even do that sometimes. You and I
Yeah.
were talking about like the transitions in seasons, right? From
Yeah.
summer to, and here in Washington State where I am, it's kind of like, hey, it's summer and now it's fall, winter, and then now it's spring
Right.
again. And that can happen in like 3 weeks or something. So you end up getting used to wearing a hat and you're coming out of winter and
Yes.
you're starting to sweat more and you're just like, what am I doing? All I have to do is like go whoop and
Yes.
pop off my hat. Why is it so hard? So, and I've not been wearing or anything on my head for a really long time other than for to protect it from the cold, and so it's just as hard for me sometimes to do that. And whenever it happens, I go, why am I letting that, why am I not doing it? And I don't know why, but you just go, whatever, it is
Yeah.
what it is, and you go, next time I won't do that. It's almost
Yeah.
like you're not aware. You're kind of like in the moment, you're grocery shopping, you get into the
Yeah.
car, you're doing this, you're doing that, and then you're like, oh, I'm sweating, what am I doing? Yeah.
Yeah, I almost felt like if I had walked into the party without
Yeah,
being bald, right, then I
totally.
feel like it would have been different because I would have walked in like, okay, I'm doing this, and
Mhm.
but like revealing it in the middle, I don't
Totally.
know.
It
I
is.
can't
It's a
explain it.
thing. It's a
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people listening will completely understand that, going in because it's like you're making the decision to be like,
Yes.
okay, it's happening and this is how I'm going in. I'm going to face it.
Made up your
And
mind.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's different if the room, changes temperature and you want to put a hat on, but it's kind of different the other
Yes.
direction. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
especially when I haven't really been ball, I'm at a party or around
Mhm.
my entire family. There was some extended family there that I haven't seen in a long time. And if it had just been my brothers and sisters and mom, that
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even thought about it, but
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at is figuring out and then my oldest sister, she's like, girl, one day you wear a wig, next day you don't, and I
Mhm.
love that concept, and that's really kind of where I want to get to, where I
Yeah.
feel the freedom to just whatever I feel like that day. I
Mhm.
just can't wrap my mind around going to work and being bald one day and then wearing a wig the next day. I feel like it's confusing for people. I
Well,
worry.
who cares
I
though?
don't
I
know.
mean, like
That's what
really,
she says.
really, like who
Right.
cares if they're confused? I know that you and I talked about how supportive your team was to
Yeah,
you, right?
they
And so you
were. Yes.
talked about the challenges of figuring out what to do when you did shave and they were really supportive of you.
They were.
I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that because it's so
Yeah.
great to have that on your side.
Yeah. So like I said, I had been thinking about shaving my head for a long time, but it was kind of impulsive. It's like it happened slowly and then all at once, right? Like everything. And so I just finally couldn't take it anymore and shaved my head. And then the next day I had huddle with my team. We have huddle every Thursday. And I had gone in and I was wearing a wig, which I hadn't had to do before. And so they already knew I was kind of going through this. And I sit down to do huddle, and I always have a list of things I'm getting ready to go through and topics and all of this. And I just had to let them know where I'm at. And I just said, guys, I've had such an emotional 24 hours, and this is what's happening. I totally shaved my head. This is a wig. I'm trying to get used to it. And they are such an amazing group of women, and they're so supportive. And in fact, one of the nurses, the wig was too long that I picked out, and I got really hot because I'm working, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing, I wanted to rip it off. So she says, come on, sit down, and she like French braids my wig for me. She's never done that, and it felt so much better. And so that's the kind of support that I have at work, that I have in my family life. I have so much love and support, and I'm still struggling. So I cannot imagine how it feels for somebody who doesn't have that, especially younger children and
Mhm.
teenagers. And if they're not surrounded by that sort of support and love,
Mhm.
uh, just the strength that it takes to make it
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah,
I
for
really,
sure.
I really admire. And I admire this generation. One of the nurses that I work with, her daughter has alopecia, and her daughter is just like, this is me. I'm who I am. And she
Mhm.
doesn't try to cover up anything. She just rocks it. And I'm like, I can learn something from these young kids. They just don't care as much what other people think, and it's beautiful. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
getting pieces of inspiration from people like you, from her, people
Yeah.
that are doing it, and it takes courage, I
Yeah.
think.
It
uh
does. It does. We are living in a time that I truly feel like the children especially are so much more accepting
yes.
of differences, right? And so we're entering kind of this newer generation where kids are like, "Oh yeah, you're different. I'm different too. This is
Yeah.
what makes me unique. This is what makes you unique." And it doesn't have to be such a thing anymore. But
Yeah.
we also, like you said, we didn't have this. You and I were diagnosed a couple years apart, and I'm a little bit older than you, but we've had it pretty much the same amount of time, right? And there
Yeah.
wasn't support. Anybody who was walking around with alopecia, we never would have known it because they would have been covering it up.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah. And so we are living in a different time. There's information. And I think even you said that the only alopecia support that you've had is through the Facebook group.
Yeah.
You didn't know about NAF, you didn't know about
No.
these other resources. So to me that's surprising too. And really saddens me because, we're in this time of information and we're like, gosh, there's still people going through this alone for 40 years or 30 or even
Yeah.
10, or feeling alone because they don't see anybody who looks like them. So, and it's still, relatively unheard of to see people going out in the world bald who are not sick, right? I mean,
Right.
and so, yeah.
Hmm.
And you know this, you encounter people who are very ill every
Yes.
day. And do you feel like that is gets in the way a little bit of you wanting to go to work without anything on your head?
Yeah. I worry about other people and how they're going to perceive me, and not like my patients that have known me for years, as some of them have known me for 5 years, and I don't want them to be like, oh my gosh, is Sarah sick? They're the sick ones, they're the ones that we're there to care for. This is not about me,
Right.
and so um and I don't know why I feel so responsible for how people feel when they're in my presence. I want people to feel comfortable, and I worry that seeing something so different, as a woman who's bald that's not sick, um, will make them uncomfortable. And that they might not know what to say or where to look, or you know, I don't know. Oh gosh, and I worry about, I'm the manager of my facility, and
Mhm.
sometimes I'm on corporate calls and things like that, and like, how am I going to be perceived from, you know, I don't know why I worry about all of this. I shouldn't. I am who I am, and
Yeah.
that's really where I want to get, is like, this is such a small part of who I am, and
Mhm.
it's like you said, kids nowadays, my boys have always been 100% like, who cares? They never wanted me to cover up from day one. They're just like, this is
Mhm.
you. It doesn't matter. That's their generation.
Yeah.
I feel like this is such a weird thing to say, but there was shame involved with my alopecia, and I know that's probably a weird thing to say, but you know, I grew up, like I said, on a farm, and my dad was pretty tough, and the only thing he really admired was strength and being tough, and that was really it. And he saw me as, too sensitive and too emotional and too everything. And so when I started losing my hair, I think it was embarrassing for him. He kind of saw me as I don't embarrassment is really the only word that I can think of. And so I guess maybe that part is still there a little bit too. Like, this is something that I need to hide from the world because it's a defect. That's what it
Yeah.
there's part of me that, even though I know it's not true, still believes that, because that's what I felt when I was 5, you
Yeah.
know. And
Well, yeah, and I think that having that kind of criticism, or I mean, I shouldn't call it something you didn't call it. So having that kind of feedback in your life, it's not easy to get away from that as an adult, a grown adult who has all these accomplishments, who has children, who's done, all of
yeah.
these wonderful things. And so I think it's really hard to separate yourself from that. Um, and at the same time, there's something kind of beautiful in the way that you say I am who I am, and I can see it's clearly because of that. You know, like there's a part of that that makes you kind of this very observant person, a person who pays attention to other people's feelings. And if you didn't grow up the way you did, I don't think that that's certainly the healthy way that you want to, you know that we've talked about that. You know, we
Yes.
don't want to say that that's, oh yeah, you're now this wonderful feeling person because of that, right?
Well,
But it is
no,
really what
I,
happened.
I think you are hitting the nail on the head. And it's funny you say that because I was, today as I was thinking about, getting ready for this conversation and what we're going to talk about and everything, I even had the thought, this could be the best thing that's happened to me. Like it can help me, like you said, accept other people for who they are and what they're going through. And it's made me who I am. And it's forced me to be brave. I mean, and so I think I think you're 100% right. That and I even had the thought that one day I might look back at this and think it's the best thing that's ever happened to me
Yeah. And
because it's gotten me to who I am today.
yeah. And I can 100% say that you will say that. Like that it's
Is
I mean,
that
it's
is
really
that
clear
how
to
you
me. I do think so. Yeah. I mean, oh, I definitely know so. Yeah, it's not a think so thing. I do
yeah.
think it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And I needed to see other people living life, like me, in order to know that it was possible for me, and when I did, and they were like amazing and thriving and just doing these, just being who they were, right? Not having to fight and do something different than, well, kind of just like pushing back a little bit on the world, right? Going, okay, yeah, I don't have to wear something on my head to make you feel comfortable.
Right.
That's something,
Yeah.
and that's like kind of this nurturing piece about who you are, but it is like a result of having to kind of please, right? And go, okay, how can I be better? How can I be, stronger and all of these things? Um, I'd love to hear, you said that you have a really supportive group of siblings, and I mean, I
Yes.
can't even imagine six of you guys. Six siblings, or are there seven of you,
Seven.
or
There's seven of
seven?
us. I'm
Okay.
number five. I'm the youngest girl, and then I
Okay.
have two younger brothers. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So you kind of fall in the middle. So it's
Hmm.
kind of like
Sure.
it's an interesting
Yes.
dynamic, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you just fall in the middle, and you've got these kind of older siblings. Do you feel like there were kind of some roles that they filled as you were losing your hair, or do you feel like you noticed something happening with the dynamics in the family when you lost your
No,
hair?
I hate to say this, but I just felt like the outcast, I just felt like I was the chunkiest one. Everybody was skinny and I had extra weight on, and then I was losing my hair in these weird patches. And I remember, I remember this one specific thing. I had lost my two front teeth. I had no hair. I was fat. Well, I don't know that I thought of myself as fat. Looking back, I wasn't fat, but
Hmm.
in my head I was. And our house was on this big hill, and I was like coming running up the hill to say hi to my grandma, and she looked at me. She goes, "Oh, you poor thing,"
Oh
because
no.
my appearance was so bad, and I was truly the ugly duckling, and then so there was that, and she tried her best. Like she would make me these. Oh my God. She would make me these hats that looked like Little House on the Prairie or something. I mean, oh, they were horrible.
Yeah.
So I looked like I was out of the, I don't know, 1800s,
Hmm.
um, when I would wear those, because I didn't always want to wear a wig. My mom,
Hmm.
she did the best she could with
Yeah.
seven kids. We live on a farm.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of money. So we
Hmm.
would go into the big town of Wichita, and we'd go to Kmart, and she would try to find a wig on clearance for me, and
Hmm.
they were horrid. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's not her fault. I love her. I am not blaming her at all. We laugh about it nowadays, but I mean, they were just horrible. They were synthetic. Oh, and I love to bake. I was always cooking. I was always in the kitchen cooking for like 15 people because there was 9 of us, and then dad had hired help and all that. So I'd be baking a cake or something, and I'd open the oven, and the heat comes out and just fries my wig.
Yeah.
And I would be like, oh no, I'd be in so much trouble. It stunk so
Oh
bad. I
yeah.
mean, it was, I don't know, burning synthetic hair, burning hair at all.
Hmm.
But so I was just a mess. I feel like I spent a lot of time by myself because I found I found comfort with animals and out in nature, which I still do love those two things. And so I would just like leave the house and be gone by myself exploring forever, and go play with the horses or cows, whatever, tame some animals. And um so yeah, I can't really think about how it would be from my siblings perspective. Oh, I do remember one time my oldest sister, she was dating this guy. Of course, I was so much younger and I thought he was just to die for, so cute. And she brings him home, and I have a cap on, and I have hair on, underneath the cap, so he couldn't really tell. And he was so sweet. He kind of grabbed my hat and
Oh
he
no.
took it off my head, and because he's playing, and he was horrified. He was horrified for me. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And his reaction to my baldness just reinforced. And he was such a sweet, sweetheart, but it just reinforced that it was something to hide and something to,
Yeah.
be ashamed of. And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
just something as it wasn't his fault at all. It was just a small thing, but I remember that memory like
Yeah.
it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't
So
know if I
all of
answered your
that, yeah, all of that just totally plays in to your comfort level now. Like, are people going to be uncomfortable? Are people
yeah.
going to be ready for this? And I do, I do want to reassure you, and this will come in time for you, that people are way more understanding and we can trust them more than we think. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that it doesn't necessarily come down to them not being trustworthy. I think that it's like in us, we're just doubting that they're going to accept us for who we are. And really they will, and the ones who don't, right? We know what to
Yeah.
do with those ones. So
Yeah.
it's
And
just
I
whatever.
think you're 100% right. And that has been proven to me over and over and over again.
Hmm.
On my Facebook page, I had posted oh, just a little bit about my struggle. And I even posted a picture where part of the side of my head was bald and showing. And the amount of love and support that I got was tremendous.
Hmm.
I mean, so I know better. That's why I get frustrated with myself. I
Yeah.
know that people are more evolved, and I don't have to be so scared of this as I am. It just gives me another, this is kind of, I'm veering off the subject, but I was doing an assignment for work, and it asked me, what are the 3 things you want to be known for? And I was like, oh my gosh, what a question, and I
Yeah.
thought about it and thought about it. And I thought, I want to be known for being authentic
Hmm.
and brave and loving. Those were kind of the 3 things I came up with. And how can I be super authentic if I'm wearing a wig? I mean, I still can be, but this is more to me authentic, right?
Hmm.
I'm even more of who I am. And it's brave to do.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to get there. I think I'm going to
Uh,
get there one
yeah.
day.
And there's no rush. I do think like what we talked about, it's a process, it's a transition, it's trying new things when we're, in the moment and going, oh, this felt good or whatever. And it will be whatever it's going to be. It's your experience to experience, and there's no rush to get there.
Yeah, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really indicative of life in general. I mean, it's just all a journey, and and
Mhm.
and there is no rush. And I just have to remember to meet myself where I am every day.
Totally.
And if that day I'm feeling insecure, then that's just how I'm feeling. That's part of the process and part of what I need to love myself through,
Yeah.
And
Totally.
but yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So, what do you think? I mean, you said, you identified these three things about yourself, which is awesome. I don't think we do that enough in our lives, right? To kind of go, what do we want to be known for? What do we want to be remembered for?
Yeah.
And I think I'm looking back a little bit, but are there things that would have helped you? Like if you could say there were maybe one or two or three things that would have helped you as a child be more secure or be more aware or anything like that that would have been more helpful for you
I
growing
think
up.
yeah, like you said, just having the resources and the support and those kind of things. Um, there was no Facebook, there was no support group, there was no podcast to listen to. Um, just knowing that I wasn't, because truly I felt like such an anomaly. I was the
Hmm.
only one in the entire world, of course, in my mind,
Hmm.
um, that had this really strange condition, and I still kind of thought I brought it on myself somehow. Like, what
Hmm.
did I do to make me lose my hair?
Yeah.
What could I have, And so, and to be honest, I didn't even try to really learn about it. I didn't go to the library. I didn't, it wasn't as easy as Googling or anything like
Hmm.
that. So I didn't even, I didn't even try.
Yeah.
So I think just having that support, knowing that there's other people out there.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing right now is probably what I needed. If I could have listened to a story going to bed at night, knowing that there's other people like this, that there's stories out there. I listened to one of your podcasts about a lady who wrote a book about her son and
Hmm.
Horace,
Hmm.
and she wrote, and so something like as simple as that,
I
just having a
know.
book that talked about a kid like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's all. And yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think that guess what? You wouldn't have found anything at the library.
right,
We know
right,
that, right? I
yeah,
think that that's the shame of it all back then. People weren't talking about it. It wasn't positive. It wasn't even, probably documented in medical things, journals or
yeah,
anything like that. Just really don't think it was happening back there in the 70s, 80s when we really
yeah,
really needed it.
yeah.
And so I'm so thankful to be in this time that we can be sharing information. And, I read on all these Facebook groups for parents, they're like, I'm looking for a book. I'm looking for a book. Because that's how I have parents introduce alopecia to a classroom, right? Or even to their own child because they do feel so alone. Even in the information of all this age, they feel alone. I remember feeling completely alone. We were alone. We were the only people that had it because
Yeah.
we never saw anybody who looked like us, right? I mean, that's not the reality, but that was what we
That's what our
felt.
reality was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I was discovering, even up to 10 years ago, I was listening to a young man, an athlete on stage at Alopecia Palooza, and he was saying, and he's easily almost 30 years younger than me, probably maybe 25. And he's saying the same exact thing that
Oh,
I felt when I was his age growing up with alopecia. And I thought, this has to change. Why is
yeah,
this happening? And it is still happening, but we're like, nip it in the bud, get a book,
yeah,
watch a video, do something, open something up so that your kids can see other people who look like them, right? And I think that representation, we know that matters across all boards. And
of
so,
course.
yeah, it would have made a difference for you for sure, knowing.
Yeah.
So, mhm.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so that's why your work is so important. And,
Oh,
just getting that awareness out there, being a resource for parents for children, that is probably one of the most important things that you're doing. And I mean, it's really commendable. I think it's great.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. I feel good about what I do. So thank you. It's nice
Good,
to hear.
good. Hey, that's important. It's
Yeah.
so important to feel good about what we do.
Yeah.
I think we spend so much time of our lives working, and having that sense of purpose. And, I mean, don't we all want to make a difference?
Hmm.
Don't you just want to feel like we talk about how you're remembered. when you're remembered, when you're gone, that people are like, she made a difference
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
world, you
Hmm.
know? And so it's
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you feel like you could prepare people who are thinking, even if it's been, a month or 2 months since they've been diagnosed, or even 10 years, how they can be prepared for shaving their head? I mean, this is it, it's like there's this monumental thing that we do. It's a choice, right? I mean, you were able to choose what was going to happen to your hair at that moment. You're like,
Yes.
I'm not going to let it come out in clumps anymore or
Yeah.
find it all in the drain in the bathtub.
Yeah.
We're taking this and we're going to do this.
Yeah.
So do you have some recommendations for people who are listening and wondering how they're going to feel, or, just maybe some things that
I
went through your brain?
honestly, I think just being patient with yourself. And, I had to wait till I was ready to, what I think happened is like the pain of losing it the way I was just got to a point where like, I don't want to go through this anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe I waited too long. I waited until I was, crying every
Mm.
morning as I'm losing it in clumps. Um, and maybe if I had done it sooner, but I just think, meeting yourself where you're at in your journey with love and acceptance is probably the most important thing that people can do. um I I don't know if I have great sage wisdom because I'm still right there going through it and
Yeah.
and trying to figure it out. But I also like joining those support groups, listening to people, that the support, I had been on that support group for a long, long time, and I had made posts here and there, not very much. But recently I had been looking at it more recently, and I've been seeing such inspirational people. This young girl, I can picture her in my mind right now. She went to prom or something, and she was just gorgeous and completely bald, and she had these beautiful gems that were affixed to her. It was like part of her makeup and affixed to her head, and she just shone. And I'm like seeing people like that, like fully embrace it and make it even like what a statement. Her walking in, like nobody could have taken their eyes off her because she was
Mhm.
just so beautiful. And the representative that you sent me, yes,
Yeah.
I looked her up immediately, and she's bald and she's out there in the public eye and she's doing it.
Mhm.
So just normalizing it, I guess,
Yeah,
and you had said, I think when we were talking last, that the more people that embrace who they are and what they look like, the more it gives other people permission to 100% be themselves too. We're talking about alopecia, but it could be so many other things.
for
It could be
sure.
so many other things that people are either ashamed of or want to hide from the world or feel like it's a defect. And so I don't know, it's just like giving people permission to be exactly who they are, where they are in their journey. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I appreciate you sharing all of that, because I think that you may not understand this yet, but you are going to be part of even more shift and change that people will continue to see. I mean, I think that people have started us off, and now it's kind of like you're just part of this really cool wave that's happening. So
Yeah.
what you're doing is already making a difference. So,
Well, it was so crazy how this all came about. I never expected. So I made the decision to shave my head, and the same day recorded it, posted it. And then you reach out to me, on Facebook in Messenger and say, "Hey, I have this podcast. I saw your video." I was like, man, the universe just blows me away sometimes how it works, right? Like
mhm.
it just really floored me that me sharing something that is very, very personal and a hard thing for me turned into something so positive as meeting you and being invited on your podcast. How cool is that? Yeah,
Well,
it's pretty
thank you.
awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I would love to have, if people are reaching out and wanting to get in touch with you, how is a good way to kind of connect with you?
Well, I did just when I recorded that video, I couldn't figure out how to put it somewhere so I could share it to people I wanted to share it with. So I did put it on my profile on YouTube. I'll send you the link for that.
Perfect.
Um or Facebook. They can just look me up on Facebook and message me. And um yeah, I that would probably be the best way, probably.
Great,
Yeah.
great. So I just want to say thank you for sharing something that, like you said, is so personal and
Yeah.
vulnerable, and you've been willing to share. Like I asked because it was a post within a support page. I asked you if we could, share that video of you shaving because it really did. It's very revealing and very eye-opening, I think, for people who are thinking about doing it, and even people who don't understand what it is to go through this kind of loss, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's like and you've been really trustful of me to share that in a way that
Oh,
will
abs
continue to help people grow.
I just really love the work that you're doing and the awareness that you're building, and I just support it 100%. So I thank you for all that and the difference that you're making out there. It's really important.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
thanks so much, Sarah, for being with us today.
Absolutely.